Dag, welkom bij de tweede Utopia podcast. Mijn naam is Bruno Hillewaren en ook voor de tweede podcast hebben we een hele boeiende gast. Mijn naam is Maurizio Andolfi, een Italiaans familietherapeut die wij kennen van boeiende consultaties die ook gefilmd zijn. En daar kan je ook meer informatie voor vinden op onze website. En vooral eigenlijk iemand die ook heel sociaal bewogen is met een heel groot hart voor kinderen, voor jongeren, maar ook voor minderheden. Het is iemand, denk ik, waar we ontzettend veel van kunnen leren. Hij is inmiddels 82, maar zijn oogjes blinken nog als je hem interviewt over ons boeiende en mooie vak. Het interview duurt ongeveer een uur, dus je kan het eigenlijk ook in 2 keren luisteren. Maar in ieder geval veel luisterplezier bij deze boeiende man die ons echt heel wat te vertellen heeft.
Maurizio, welcome. I will make an introduction in Dutch, but just to say how nice it is to talk to you. And this idea of this podcast is a little bit about your life and your work and what we can do with it for the colleagues and the students. So first of all, you always have a nice story. What did you move from being a child psychiatrist to a family therapist? Could you tell a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, it was a long process. I was a resident in child psychiatry. I was supposed to do play therapy with children, and then I decided not to do in the orthodox way. Normally, you do play therapy with the child alone. So I invite the mothers from the waiting room. I say, "Come in, we play together." Then I ask the child, "Can you invite your father to come?" The child invited the father came, so then the father was playing with the 3 of us. Then I asked, "Where are the other siblings?" Mom would say, "They're at school, they are fine," which was very interesting answer. Like this boy or girl is not fine, the others are fine. So I said, "Okay, I want to know the whole family." So then the sibling came, and then I started to do family therapy.
And that is such a nice story because you need to have the courage and you need to be curious and to be interested in relationships.
Yeah, I think the biggest courage was to leave the Department of Child Psychiatry that I don't think everybody will be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to change my ideas. I couldn't change the Department of Child Psychiatry's room. So I decided to move, and I went to teach and to work at the Department of Psychology for 40 years.
Okay. And then you moved on. So you say if you can't change the context, you have to look for another context. So you created another context. And then you moved to the United States. What made you move to the United States?
Now, first of all, what made me to move to the United States was a meeting with Mara Silvini Palazzoli. She came to the Department of Child Psychiatry, gave a seminar. She was a fire, very, very energetic. So I got from her the inspiration. Then I said, I want to go to US. I went to US in 1970. I met Nathan Ackerman, which was one of the founders of family therapy. I stayed with him for a month. Then I said, that's what I want to do. I went back to Rome 2 years later. I got a fellowship in social community psychiatry at Albert Einstein College of Medicine as a social community psychiatrist. So that was fantastic. So I need to find my mentors outside my country.
Mm-hmm. And did Nathan Ackerman, did he help you to play with the children or was that later on?
No, Nathan Ackerman was a child psychiatrist
Yes.
himself. He was probably the most provocative family therapist I knew. Then, if you, many people don't know that Minuchin has been a student of Nathan Ackerman. So he took from Nathan Ackerman this kind of sense of provocation that I also took from Minuchin. Basically, it was opening up in the session the dirty games of the family. Very often children were triangulated in the conflict of the parents. So instead of minimize that, he was making even more open, using the child to amplify them.
Okay, and then you speak about triads, and I think you also studied with Murray Bowen, and you learned from him to work with genograms and to have eye for the triads?
Oh yeah, I work with Bowen. Actually, I learned two things from Bowen. One was the use of the genogram, the triad, the intergenerational triads, all this concept of differentiation of self, cutoff, etc. But then once I talked with him in a big auditorium, just alone with him, and he was telling me about his research. He said, Maurizio, I've been training psychiatry because at that time mostly psychiatrists went to do family therapy. I've been training these psychiatrists, teaching techniques. The other group I sent back home to reconnect with the families. Can you guess who were the best family therapists? Of course, the second group. So in that period, when I lived in New York, many of the people that became very famous in the field, including Monica McGottry, Elizabeth Kerzer, and many other people, went back home. So everybody was going back home to reconnect. So that was a fantastic concept. So
Oh, that is very nice. So it's also a message for us as therapists. Before we learn techniques, we should try to connect and to see the relationship with our own family.
oh yeah, that's the reason for which the academia, even before in my previous institute in Rome, I've been always dedicated the first year to personal training. So basically, people first has to work on themselves. Then they can move to do clinical work. And we work through family genogram, through the, through the genogram, I want people to learn about family development. Many family therapists don't know much about family development. They're all systemic, they go them system, so they look they hear now, what's happening now in the relationship, which is great. But then if you want really to know how people behave today, you have to connect that part with the history. So then that family genogram is a big exercise to connect past, present, etc.
And this part of genograms, you told us also, if you learned us, that there was a big difference between the East and the West Coast in the United States, and the in New York and Philadelphia, there were much more with genograms and families.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the word genogram, I don't know if it's complete, but let's say the group in New York were more psychodynamic, which is a word that systemic therapists don't like. What does it mean? All the people on this coast has been in psychoanalysis. I've been myself. But then they all move out from psychoanalysis because the idea to work in one-to-one was too limiting. So the people discover how to bring these ideas about inner self, about family cycle, etc., to bring in the context of a larger unit. It was a family. Now I think that this field has been always divided and is still very divided. Probably is divided with the same parameters of the beginning. On the East Coast, people were working on differentiation of self, on cutoff, on enmeshment, on conflict in family, on history. On the East Coast, system theory was built up, and there were fantastic ideas. I remember there was a famous paper in 1957 done by J. Haley, Don Jackson, probably Betzel was also there, about what are the theory of schizophrenia. So they developed research, they developed the research on the double bind theory, which in that years, 60s, early 70s, was a great, interesting idea. Then through the year, it became one of the worst ideas because it was dyadic, it was based on one person, which unfortunately is always the mother, who double bind someone with the child. So was and then in '78 in New York there was a big conference. It was called Beyond the Double Bind Theory, and there was a book by a guy called Berger who wrote about why this theory. But then, if you go somewhere in my country, original country, there are still people ask a student to read Pragmatic Human Communication. Now, pragmatic human communication, I always say to my students, is fantastic from page 1 to 90 because it talks about the axiom of human communication. A fantastic idea. The idea of context from 9 on has to be because it's about the double bind theory, which in itself is not responsible how we use the ideas. Now, do you know why family therapy died in US? I'll tell you. Afterwards, the place that initiated family, everything started from there. Why they die? Because the enemy of family therapies were the family of mentally ill. So when the family of mentally ill feel that you, family therapy, are the enemy, there is something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Why they were the enemy? Because they put a lot of blame. Like you have a psychotic young person or bipolar or borderline. So then all the guilt goes upstairs. Mostly mothers are
Yeah.
accused or feel guilty or are making to feel guilty.
Yeah.
So then the family didn't feel reassured or supported. They felt labeled.
But it's such a shame because I know even from the daughter of Bateson and Gregory Bateson, that was not at all his ideas to have. It was more like describe and circular processes, and it's
Yeah.
such a shame that it became.
Yeah, I think people have to know history and dates. Now there was an original group where Bateson joined. Don Jackson was the heart of the group, and Gregory Bateson was not a therapist, but was good to introduce ideas, introduce the issue of power, etc. But then, Don Jackson suicide. That was a big secret. For a long time, people wouldn't talk about that. It was Mary Bowen that in a big conference disclosed the fact that Don Jackson died in that way. Gregory Bateson preferred dolphins to psychiatrists. Went to do research on dolphins. Virginia Satir, who initiated that group, went to Esalen to work with the pills to do Gestalt therapy. So basically, the original group, AJ, went to Milton Erickson and then moved to Minuchin in Philadelphia. So then, who inherited the whole thing was Vaslavich, Bivin, and what they did was mostly individual brief therapy, which they're still doing. You know, so they introduced the idea of brief therapy with 10 sessions. Basically, almost never they saw families, but all the people think that Palo Alto was the sanctuary of family therapy. So I think there is a lot of ignorance in this field.
Is that one of the reasons also that you prefer the term family therapy? And let's move on again to your start to work with Minuchin and what you learned from him. Could you make that shift? And is that the reason why you prefer family therapy?
No, I prefer family therapy when I start to invite mothers and father and kids in the session. That was family therapy. So what I needed to have validations, you know. Validation were teachers who were believing in families. Minuchin was one of them. Whitaker was one of them. He always believed in families, a larger family unit. Fremo believed in families because he was working with couples, but he was the first one who invited family of origin in the sessions. So I learned that. Then, of course, I joined the theory, the systemic theory, because they've been extremely useful to observe the interaction now with the family. So there's a great length.
Yeah.
But then if people say I do systemic therapy, I don't know what they mean, because for me to work in the present is like cutting both my arm,
You can give a handshake to a system, but you can do that to the family. Huh? You can give a hand to the
I
family.
always say that I like to integrate system theories with developmental theory. System speaks about the horizontal, and developmental theory speaks about vertical.
Can we just move to Minuchin and what influenced in you? And I just want to ask, we have in the Netherlands, we speak about the house of Minuchin and the house of Andolfi, the three-generational house of Minuchin and the three-generational house of Andolfi. Do you recognize that?
I don't understand well.
Well, because we say you have to see it like a house, and the structure of the house
Yeah.
that we learned from Minuchin, that the parents have to form a team. But what we learned from you is that it is a three-generational house.
Now, for what I learned from Minuchin, first of all, to use yourself on the floor, walking, doing any sort of thing. Going behind the one mirror, bringing the kids behind the one mirror, play on the floor with them. So lots of movement. Plus, I learned, and he said very clearly in a few interviews that he could choose to be a psychoanalyst because he was taking the same psychoanalytic training that I took. White Alanson Institute, I was with the Carnegie all night, same city, and they were the new Freudians. So Minuchin was a new Freudian therapist. And he has to decide to become a psychoanalyst or to be a social family therapist. And I think because of his origin, probably, he was coming from a very small village in Argentina, very poor. I think he decided to use his expertise with people who are marginalized. So his major pleasure was to work in Philadelphia with black Puerto Rican families, father jobless, mother overwhelmed, kids who are delinquent or they do number. So it was fantastic in giving structure to family who didn't have any structure. Then it was good also in terms of eating disorder. I learned from him. For a while, I used that to have a first session with the anoretic girls on the table, lunch session.
Okay.
And I imported this idea for a few years. Then I changed my idea because I felt the problem is not food, so I didn't have to stay on food. Now, Minuchin never ever wanted to see the flow of the grandparents. Probably he realized that when he became grandparent. Same happened with Mara Servini Palazzoni. Because when you become grandparents, you cannot deny the importance of the grandparents because you are part of that club.
Yeah.
So he discovered at the end. But I remember that before he would say to students, that's not my model. Talk about parents and child, no family of origin. Also because he was a reductionist. He has to reduce the complexity of the family to the major issue, which is the primary triad, parent, child, parent, child.
So you integrated both theories of Murray Bowen and then Minuchin. And I just want to highlight, because you always said, for me, it was good to first study with Minuchin and then go to Whittaker, because then I have a structure, and then I integrate the craziness and the playfulness.
Yeah, it's very true. I think Minuchin wouldn't get offended if I say he was a fantastic primary school teacher. When you are a kid, you need teachers that give you the foundation of what you had to learn. So I think any therapist could benefit from learning his ideas about the foundation of the family. Then, of course, you have to evolve. Minuchin was not very much at ease with crazy people. He wouldn't like to work with. Now, Whittaker was his cup of tea because he was close to be crazy himself. So he was able to get very, very close to the irrationality. Minuchin, he had to say reality. So I pick up stuff from different sources.
Yes.
I was very open to take some piece here, some piece there, and then to find some integration inside myself.
And could we also say, because the creativity you have and also the audacity to do certain things, that was you have it from yourself, but you also learned it a little bit from Carl Whittaker?
Oh no, I learned by everyone.
Yeah.
I consider my teacher from Minuchin. I learned never give up.
Okay.
He would never give up, which I think sometimes become unrealistic, but it's a good idea. You have to try again. Another direction, you have to try. From Whittaker, I learned how more people in the room, the best. And people means more generation. I learned from him the labeling, the IP, because when you see me with the work, you don't know who is the patient anymore. It's normalized, let's say, the family in a way.
And that's also something we like so much in your work, and that is a great difference with psychoanalysis ideas, that you don't look for the pathology, but you look for the strengths and away from the pathology towards the strengths and the qualities.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that I would agree because psychoanalysis, like family therapy, was very much different. So, from what I learned by my study, having my own therapy on the couch, with the Karen Horney model, I learn about resources, not to learn
Okay.
about pathology. One of the reasons for which the new Freudian split from Freudian idea was mostly because of they have a very positive overlook. They open up the pathway to the positive psychology, you know?
Yes. And that is very, I can see it in your work as well, that you always look for the positive aspects,
Yeah,
and you call, yeah, you start with the identified patient, but you make him like a resource, so you.
absolutely. Now that's, I think I was helped by children
Mhm.
because with children I saw they could present the most bizarre symptom, the most unusual, the more complicated. In 3 weeks, the symptom might disappear if they feel that there is a transformation
Mhm.
around, not him, around the family. So I found that children can play numbers, and they can be normal, and they can replay number. You know, I give you a very simple example. Two parents fight, they scream to each other. Child start to have a temper tantrum in the room or start to cry or to do something. So then it takes over because the parents understand that the child needs them. You understand?
Yes.
So you know how to attract attention on him. No, children attract attention in many ways. Some are healthy, some are very bizarre, some are very unhealthy. Way to say, I'm here, stop doing the war. Sometimes kids pay a big price because of the parents.
Mhm.
Sometimes, often, I saw children be much more mature than their parents in the room,
Mhm.
which is not the best overlook of the family, but still you have to accept that.
Mhm.
So children were my, uh, how to say, my teachers. And then I understood, like, child is involved at the beginning of the session. I make him or her feeling the expert. After a while, he go back and start to play in his angle, if it's more. What does it mean? He trusts me that I can work with the adults. So then it's a deal. Often I prescribe to child, look, I want to see in 2 weeks. If you still play numbers, or if you stop. And I know that if you stop means that you trust me to work with your parents. And that's happened often.
So you give the child a voice, and they give you the permission to work with the family and the parents. Yes.
Yeah, I double check.
Yeah.
I don't trust like that, you know.
Okay.
I make the deal. I want to be sure that I do something, but also give me something back.
And then I also learned from you that I think you got it with Bowen, that we should not be too protective towards children. There is a big difference between respecting children and protecting them.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned Bowen.
Yeah.
No, Bowen was very far away from children.
Okay.
Was an erratic, a very solemn voice. He was, as the therapy was also very slow. I rarely see children. He was not a child, but he worked indirectly for the sake of the children because he was doing a lot of work with the parents and understanding that his parents, if they keep depending from their own family of origin, they don't take a high position, as he called, then children might be damaged by that.
Yeah. And I think what I like also is that you speak about the child as a resource or a co-therapist, and you say, oh, I'm a little bit provocative, but in Italian it means provocare. You call the child forward.
Yeah, I got many criticism in the years of provocation. In one of my books called, in English, how it's called? The Myth of Atlas.
Yeah.
In Italian is called differently. Now, in the Myth of Atlas, I have a chapter about provocation. I wrote provocation and support were two contemporary issues. I provoke you at the same time to support you. But that because in English provocation means something different. I punch you. I'm going to do some harm to you. And then, of course, maybe I was young, I was too energetic, so the provocation was, even though there was support, was too central. So I learned how to decentralize myself. Then I realized that to work as a team with the child was the best way to enter the family. Before, I was taking the child a little more on the side and try to provoke the parents or doing like this. So I think I changed over 50 years a great deal.
Oh, that's so good to hear. We always learn. And could you explain a little bit more about what you call the bottom-up approach, that using the child also to ask questions to the parents and about their family history?
Yeah, if someone or you want to ask me, what is original of you? What is really Maurizio Andolfi? What did you add? Minuchin used to call the public domain. We bring something to the public domain, so it's not anymore ours. It belongs to everyone as soon as we share. So the only thing I feel is me is this bottom-up approach, because multi-generational therapy, even though it's not the mainstream, even if you go on the big handbook of family therapy, multi-generational family therapy is a very small chapter for some reason that I don't know if I have time to share. Anyhow, it's already small. You have few authors there, in which Bowen is one of the principal. So Bowen, Borzomaninagi, Jim Fremo, Gerard Zook, Donald Williams, a number of people. Some of them they are not so known to. They were M. Stilley. They were all working on the idea of including the family of origin in the picture, but they didn't include the child. So there was intergenerational in terms of try to focus on the adult, how the adult can become more grown-up person, or how it's depending, and how it's been locked with loyalties in his own family. Now the bottom-up approach is this idea to make the child the center of the scenario. And why is good? Because the child is already the center of the scenario, because he's sick, because he's labor, because parents are afraid. So it's not on the side, it's the center. Mine is the center because it's something that we call pathology. So then I keep the child central, I transform pathology in assets. Then parents are more happy if they see a therapist that say how good you are to their child. They will never context that. So I make them happy by the fact that I say, "Oh, you have a fantastic child." Then you confuse them. They come because they want to fix the problem of the child. And sadly, this child is great. Then, of course, I use the child to enter the family. I found this intergenerational question incredibly useful. Once a father of a Belgian boy was angry to him. In the follow-up, a year later, after this consultation, said, "It's the first time that my child asked a question to me. The question of the child was, how was the anger in your family when you were 11? Actually, it was not this question. It was my question that I put in the mouth of the child. But still, the child was asking the father. It was not me asking the. The father was moved by the fact that this child, for the first time, asked something to him about his life when he was a child. So that's the magic. So then, if this is the result, I gave to the mouth to children so many intergenerational questions.
And these are some nice questions to discover the family history. And in this example, there's also a video that you let the child ask the mother, how was anger at your time, or how are you when you were 11, and the same at the father.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so you discover in a vivid way the genogram.
Yeah, you discover a lot of things that might be still open issues to know in the family, like was on this family. With adolescent even more, because one of the rule of life is when I'm adolescent, even if I was an adolescent on another period of time, I did all my transgressive behavior, I did all my wrong stuff, then I become adult, then I have children. For children, I have to appear like I'm a clean person, everything perfect, no mistake, no transgression. So it's a lie. We lie with our children a piece of our reality when we were adolescent ourselves. So if you ask to that bad adolescent, how was your father's family at your age? You discover incredible things. Then, of course, you don't want to ask this question in order to blame parents, but in order to explore parents' life. Exploration is different than blaming.
And you might also ask, how was your relationship with your father when you had my age? For instance, and then you discover some ideas about the relationship between the parents and his parents.
Exactly. Then you add the floor.
Yes, and that is the third floor, one
Yeah.
might say. Just a small question, because do you think there is a difference, you call it relational questions, between relational questions and circular questions?
Relation and circular?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like more relational.
Yeah.
First of all, I like when a language is too abused, I don't like anymore. Even systemic is an abused word. Circularity, Then, there was a lot of contestation about the concept of circularity because then where is the moment in which you have to feel responsible for your action if everything is so circular? And the feminist movement was one of the vocal people that were saying, this circularity is become also an excuse for any sort of bad behavior. So in a way, I believe that it is not like Pavlov, action and reaction, It's not the way. But I'm not so fond of circular. Plus, never read anyone that describe a number of different circular questions. Never. So it's the title of the chapter, but there is not a chapter. When I talk about relational questions, I describe many books. Indirect question, meaning I ask something to you about your wife, not to your wife. I ask to you something this is an indirect question. Or something about your child, I ask you something indirectly. Indirect questions are much richer than direct questions. Then you have intergenerational question. We saw that. Then we described so many times as if questions, imaginative questions, metaphorical questions. So I can mention even more. So I try to write a synopsis of different relations. Now, why I call relational? Because, I mean, with you, if you are a brother of mine or whatever, I have a relationship. I don't have a circular something, you know? So circularity again is an abstraction. Relationship are real, you know? I relate with my father, with my son, with my daughter, etc. Do you understand?
I understand, and
Yeah.
thank you. And relational questions open up the relational field as well.
Yeah.
That is the aim.
And relational question, very different interactions. And many people, they like it. In brief therapy, you change interactions. Interaction are what you observe here about relationships. Otherwise, interaction are useless. I mean, I want to see how you interact with the person. Like you have a man who put the wife down, you know, in the interaction. I want to know how that started, you know. So as to go to see the relationship of this man with his own father, with his own family of origin. Then I will understand the nature of the interaction. If I say the interaction, I just describe the panorama here.
And it's clear what you mean by relationship. It's also on a deeper level, and love is also a relationship. And now we have the relationship field, but there is also something important, the context. And what I like in your work also, you always ask for the maps. Like you have this example of this man in Algeria that was very angry, but when you started to ask about the map and where he came from, you start a completely different field about his context. Could you?
First of all, I was always interested in traveling. I never travel only as a tourist. I travel walking around, looking around with some guy, with some local people to learn about places, you know, and to learn about the costume of the place, the tradition, the way of living, you know. Sometimes I used to go with my camera, taking pictures. So I've been always curious about world that is not close to me. Now, then, of course, I became a therapist. Then I start to work a lot with migrants. And then when you work with migrants, this is so easy. Why? Because they move from one world to another place, and they still have a lot of nostalgia. Often the place means where we were born. So once I was seeing a family in Paris. Two parents who, for work, moved from Morocco and lived in Paris. For over the 20 years, they never had any friend. They had two kids. They all look Moroccan, of course, but they feel that they are French because they grew up there. Anyhow, to make short the story, I had the family genogram, then the map of the world. I asked to the daughter, where your mother from? And she said, from Casablanca. Then I say, can you just, it was enough to say Casablanca, no? Then I say, can you show me the map? She showed me Casablanca. She put the finger. Mom started crying like, cry. Why? Because when we amplify Casablanca, we point out the daughter, she had all this sense of what she lost. And she couldn't go off into back home. So that's therapy. Is to make people to reconnect through tears, through nostalgia, to whatever, to the land, and to see how kids are in between two cultures, you know, where is the identity? Are you Moroccan? Are you French? Are both? You are one against the other. You have to deny one identity. So the map of the world is like a navigator. You know, when you go on the car, you have a navigator to orient yourself.
Yes.
So the map of the world is a navigator. I use so much that. Genogram is more the map of the family. The map of the world is the geography, I mean the places.
Yeah, we sometimes in supervision people say they come from Turkey, but Turkey is such a big country, and even if you come from the Netherlands,
Yeah.
in many different places. And could you just add a little bit, because you were touched also when you spoke about Minuchin, that I remember the conference in Rome that you said, do we have to be a little bit activist? And Minuchin said, a couple of years I said no, and now I have to come back to that. We have to take care of what is happening in the world. And this conference here in Rotterdam, you also dedicated to the children in Gaza. Could you explain a little bit more how we have to take care of this topic as well as family therapists?
You are opening up a really very dramatic issue. I don't know. I mean, family therapy was a social tool. I mean, we are not talking about war in this sense. But when I was working in the South Bronx or South Philadelphia, we organized conference, the urban ghetto, family therapy in the urban ghetto. I was going 2 times a week to do home visiting. A little different from some of our friends because the home visit was on a crisis. And we go, a therapist, a nurse, with our car, and at home. Anything could happen. I remember once we were called because a young man was trying to stab with the knife, or the kitchen knife, the mother. So we were going home and we were going to look any sort of thing. In South Philadelphia was the same thing. So we were prepared to be on the trenches. We were not just clean therapists in nice office, with nice nevrotic couples. We were prepared to dangers, for ourselves, and also to see the danger in people. And I remember there were Oswald was one of the initiators that said, when you teach family therapists, you have to teach them at least 1 year in a urban ghetto to make a good therapist. Now, this language, I don't know if the training of family therapy today, I expect the people to work because you don't might not a urban ghetto, but you have a lot of marginalized areas where there is a lot of problem. I remember I worked for the La Gerbe. I don't know if you know in Belgium. La Gerbe was one of the most tough areas. Even today, all the foreign community live in neighbors, among themselves. So then you have a lot of conflict with the local people. So I grew up as a social community psychiatrist. Plus, I belonged to the anti-psychiatry movement when I was there. Now, I was in France a few days ago. I was invited for a conference inside a mental hospital. I don't have that image anymore because in '78, mental hospital been closed in Italy. Then things are not so perfect, even the mental hospital. But people will never expect, the public opinion will never push you to reopen mental hospital because there be such a shift, not only about mental climate, about population. People wouldn't force people with psychosis to go and be locked in a mental hospital. So I think that was also politics because we had this law passed because Franco Basaglia was a psychiatrist who handed to be in the parliament. Otherwise, we will never be able to. So in a way, one of the issues is also how we can also move more in the politics, also in the politics of the mental services, Like there is kind of huge use of drugs or medications or individual therapy. We think that this is very limiting. So this is part of our commitment to become social activator in this arena. Now, what's facing now is something more dramatic. Gaza is a good example. There's so much silence in the world about Gaza. Even now you cannot even see anymore because they take even in the last communication channel. So people can die without the world not even knowing, even though they know. So gas is not just gas. I think it's the fact that this world is becoming crazier, more and more unhuman. So it's something that is connected with us or not. First of all, I think we are associations, order, psychologists, psychiatrists, family therapists. Now, what we have been doing, besides writing the manifesto in Assisi, which at least was putting the family as the central point of the main resource in any part of the world. Even the Palestinians, they will survive because their sense of family will remain anyhow, whatever will happen. So the family has to be looked at, honored as the most relevant unit, emotional unit in any part of the world. But that's not enough. For example, now we organize a conference in July. If any institutions of family therapists will do the same thing, do you know how many people will face this issue? We invite the sister of the Dalai Lama. We forgot about the genocide of Tibet. Nobody cares. Well, this is a huge issue that's never been changed. Then we have from Gaza, the responsible of the mental health programs. Can you imagine? I don't know what he's going to talk about. He's now in Egypt, but he is still the responsible mental health in Gaza. There is, I don't know, there is apparently nothing left, but still, sooner or later, the consequence of this war, I don't think they can kill 2 million of people. That will be really barbaric. So there will be many people die, many people survive. Can you imagine what happened with the children who has been survived to this massacre? So
it's so important what you're saying, Maurizio. We have to take care of the world as well.
Yeah, we have to invite the voices of the people. Mustafa Kosowski is a Palestinian Israeli person. He trained with us. He's a fantastic family therapist. He's a poet. Poems, music. There are ways in which message can be conveyed. They're not just words. Then we have other people who are talking about forced migration, how they work in Ukraine, here and there. So in a way, we have to have the courage to go against the power.
No, we could speak for hours about this topic, I think, and I can see that it touches your heart and it touches my heart as well. But it's also an invitation for family therapists to not only to work in the room, but also have windows towards the and it's so important, Maurizio. Is that why your manifesto is also important for you?
Yeah, that's manifesto was an idea of 12 people from many different countries to say something. I think there is a movement, even in our field, in politics, everywhere, to consider the word family bad. Because in many families you have child abuse. Do you know how many families that come from migrant children are taken off because apparently they don't know how to raise their kids, or maybe because in their culture they still hate as education their kids, that you cannot hit a child in this country, so the child has to be removed from home. So do you see how many damage we, in order to protect whatever it means kids we do in terms of destroy the unit of family instead of helping them out, So I think family, nobody cares about family. Even in our field, nobody pay. The insurance doesn't pay for family therapy in most of the country. That say something. Family don't exist. In the DSM-5, there is only individuals.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, but there is some hope, and we will move on to the hope for the next generation, because I can see that even if it is from financial reasons, that some villages take care about working with families, at least I see it in our institute, that there is some
Yeah.
hopefulness. But then you have to go beside the DSM-5 and the insurances.
Yeah, I think we had to learn from, from what we call primitive family system. You know, I've been in touch with Senegal, number of countries that we consider developing
Mm-hmm.
just to be elegant, which means second grade country. And then they have some regions about that, about raising children. Like in Senegal, there are so many women who died at the delivery because of the medical condition, the situation. So the kids learn to call mom all the aunties. So there is not only one mom, there are 2 or 3 moms. So if the mom died, they have other moms. It's not clear.
Yeah.
Or the community support, or disappear in the Western world. Community doesn't give a damn anymore, doesn't make any sense. I remember when I was a child, there were funerals in my country, people stop and do a sign or whatever. They stop for respect. Now, if you see the funeral, they say, oh my God, I'm losing 5 minutes in the car because they slow down the traffic.
Yeah.
Huh?
So
We don't respect. Or people are dying in the street or the accident. Nobody go anymore to support because you never know what might happen. So we are becoming so egotistic.
and we need to slow down, and we need to take care of each other. That's also your message, I think. And that is also the message in the manifesto.
Yeah, that's. I think we need more manifest. I know that there are some colleagues of mine who are. There is a big conference in Lyon in August, so they are trying, inspired a little bit by the manifesto. They want to write a political manifesto, which is a moment, a new step, because the manifesto is not really a political manifesto. It's a declaration that can be heard by politicians as well. But to have like some standard that are more political for our, I don't know, perhaps for our association, for our therapists, I think will be also very useful.
We can hear your invitation from your heart, Maurizio. We have still a couple of minutes, and I just want to address. We went out to the world and the community, but if we zoom in, I think there is also a message from you that is very important for us therapists. I think that is moving away from doing therapy to becoming a therapist, and to get in touch with yourself, and to be yourself, and yourself also in relationship with others. Could you just tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is one of the questions that make me always very upset. Not a question. When you ask this question, I see this scenario. People has been considering systemic therapy a mental thing, something that we cultivate in our head and don't move over here. They will never discuss themselves as human beings. They will never organize program for personal formation for their trainees because they already are so removed with their abstract ideas, very sophisticated ideas, but they remain here. Now, and this field has never stayed. You work with families, you work with people with suffering, you work with craziness, you work with abuse. You have to work on yourself. It's an ethical basic point. And what I appreciate of psychoanalysis, even if I don't feel I'm a psychoanalyst, at least they are clear. Before you see client, you have to take your own psychoanalytic training as a patient. So at least they were very clear about that. Family therapy or systemic therapies never stay, and no association ever stay that in order to do clinical work, you have to do personal work.
Oh, we do in the Netherlands.
That's very good.
That's very
But
good.
it's very, if you look around, and then sometimes it's very random. Some people do, so my idea is that how you have young kids, young therapists who now has to work with the most, because problem have been increasing. The nature of the problem in this world has been increasing enormously. The complication, the symptom, the description, the diagnosis. So people has to feel that this a duty. Then, of course, who is going to do personal formation with them? Because it's not easy. You need someone that want to spend time, that is benevolent, that is prepared to deal with the open wound of us therapists. Sometimes they are much more open than the wounds of the families.
And we will take care of that, I can assure you that. And just because you say your own wounds, and I know how your brother, and you have two brothers, was so important. I think siblings are always also very important, and they not always enter into the therapy room or into the practice. Could you explain a little bit, just a little bit before we end, what is the important for you for siblings, and what with your brother, and also the importance of brothers and sisters?
You know, we once we organized a conference on siblings, and we say a difficult journey. We are not born as brother and sister. We are born as son or daughters of our parents. To become siblings is a journey. Do you understand what I
I
mean?
understand, yeah.
So then, if you have the golden child or the first child is a boy or whatever else, in some culture there is really favoritism, no, for the gender. Or you are the second or the third, and there can conflict. Parents split, one here, one there. So then one child goes here, one child goes to protect her. It's very hard to become siblings. So sibling is a goal. We are born as kids of our parents. And good parents, which they exist, are the one who don't polarize their children, don't triangulate their children and their issues. But sometimes these parents are not like that. So they had to take one piece here, one piece there. So then you see an incredible issue is the will. When parents die, the will, the most incredible fight. I've been distant from my brother for 25 years because of the will, because someone felt there was, as I say, not recognized enough. Another one got more. It can be even stupid little thing. But why this brother got more than me? But then issue are open, you know. So sibling is very important in therapy. Plus, when you work, I remember when I was doing supervision in Perth with the eating disorder there, the case manager would say, why you want to invite? I was there as an external consultant. Why you want to invite the patient is dead, the eating disorder guy. Why you want to invite this? I said, because I'm a family therapist. Yeah, but it's nothing to do with with the client, because there's so much focus on the issue, on the pathology, that these kids are not part of the.
And you know, Maurizio, that a lot of families nowadays are they have divorced parents, and the person who you join the most in time is then your brother or your sister. If,
Absolutely, yeah,
so it is
absolutely, yeah.
important. It's important.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
I think also we consider half brother, half sister. You know, we use this language. Kids don't think in terms of half. They feel I'm a brother or sister. Unless we've been destroyed their bond.
Just to end this conversation, but because I could talk for hours with you, but I have two last questions. Is there anything that we didn't address in this interview that you consider as important? Is there anything that
That we didn't
we didn't talk
touch.
about that you say, I think this is still important to say?
No, I think we covered so many
We cover many
things. I
things.
don't feel you did a great
No, no,
job.
no. We cover many things. Then I have a last question. I also asked it to Monica McGoldrick. What would be your hope for the field of family therapy? What would be your hope?
No, my hope for the future will be that they keep the family as the center of their research or the center of their work. So I've been always for family. Now, when I say family, I often add community.
Yeah.
So family and community. Family without community is not real. Family live in a community. So in a way we have to be community, family community therapists, you know. So that's what I hope the people that another hope is very hard. Stop inventing new labels in our field. Stop inventing new models. It's so ridiculous. Anybody invent the wheel. Any model has to be new, attractive, and then people buy the new models. Be more reasonable. We meet people. And of course, some guidelines are useful. Any model for me is great, as much as related to people. Once I wrote a chapter saying when models are more important than people. So now, if models are less important than people and you honor people, that's okay. But if your model make the people in a shadow, or they are not so relevant, my model is, then I think you are too grandiose and egotistic.
Oh, I think that's a nice phrase to end this conversation, and it's such an invitation to stay united. It's a little bit like a family tree, you know. We have to honor our family tree, also of family therapists, and to continue that work without cutting off each time and in a new model. And also, you're saying take care of the families, of the relationships, and that's the heart of the family therapy, I think, and the relationships and the community. Thank you so much, Mauricio, for this
It's a
interview.
great pleasure to talk with you, Bruno.
Thank
Huh?
you, Maurizio. Thank you very much.
Dit was het interview met Maurizio Andolfi. Iemand nog met een mooie boodschap van vooral goed verbonden te blijven met elkaar. En ook niet alleen therapie te doen met technieken, maar eigenlijk het ook te durven zijn. En ons ook niet onbehoord te laten voor alles wat er in de wereld gebeurt. Dus ik hoop dat jullie ervan genoten hebben. Heel erg bedankt voor het luisteren. En graag een volgende keer waar we ook een boeiende gast hebben voor onze volgende uitzending.